very good evening to South Africa, those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman, and this is It's Topical, our digital audience with us tonight. It's so good to see them. I'm looking forward to getting their take on this very, very topical issue. Among them, our guests as well. Equal education, quality education. What does that mean to you? One definition of equality means that all students receive the same standard of learning, standard being the operative word. But what's the standard? How do we measure it? Is it time to shake things up? Perhaps one exam for all. What will that do? Will it make a significant difference in the lives of our children? And also, to what extent is there a link between quality education and socially cohesive societies? We will discuss tonight, which leads us to the question of the week. And we're asking you, are you in favor of one examination for all grade 12 pupils in South Africa? It's being talked about currently. Let's break it down. Walk with me. I'm going to get you some context. The writing of one exam, is it necessarily an indication of fairness as well as equality? Let us know. Perhaps the better question to ask is, what needs to be done in order to improve quality in the poorest schools? This is what I want to talk to you about. Tackle these real in-your-face issues, right? Share your thoughts with us on X at It's Topical SABC. Perspective coming up. All right, let's get you some context. And as always, we turn to the magic wall. And to help me do that, my guest tonight is Nziswa Mani, SABC News specialist researcher. Nzi, good to have your better mind on the program to help us break things down. I want to start by teeing it up for the viewers, right? And getting a sense of what we're talking about in terms of the class of 2023. Break it down for us, IBDBE.
Good evening, Blaine. When we break down this graphics, what you need to understand is that there are three assessment bodies, but we mainly are focusing on IEB and basic education. But these three assessment bodies are IEB, basic education, and Sakai. IEB and Sakai are both private, but Sakai focuses mainly on correspondence, and then IEB, and then basic education, which caters to the general public of South Africa. As you can see, the differences mainly in numbers.
This is stock, right?
Yes.
This is a major difference.
Yes.
Properly.
IEB,
15,000.
yes.
Around
which is just a fraction of our learner cohort, the 2023 Matric cohort. It's about 1.5 of the 890 Matric learners that wrote for basic education, which is a stark difference there and there. And the basic education has over 20,000 schools, and IEB has just over 200 schools. And when it comes to the Matric pass rate that we saw IEB getting 90.846 Matric pass rate, and basic education achieving a milestone of getting 82.9 in their pass rate.
And this is important to note.
Yes.
Why? Because there's been the steady increase in terms of this number in terms of the DBE exam.
Yes.
2009 we saw around 60%. Fast forward 2023 in the 80s.
Yes.
Progress noted.
This is a progress indeed, the highest they've ever achieved. I mean, IEB is always here in the 90s, so they've done very well. Right.
I want to look at some of the pros and cons. What are analysts saying, what are educational specialists saying with regards to the difference between the IEB and the basic education?
The difference is, I want to say, when we're talking about these pros and cons, for me, I feel like these are some of the perceptions, not necessarily the truth. For instance, IEB is seen of a higher standard and of greater international recognition. Basic education also has been, Umalusi did a study a year or two back showing that the National Senior Certificate is comparable to, it benchmarked against 5 international qualifications like the Cambridge Assessment, New Wales Higher Certificate, the Kenyan High School qualification, and it found that it is comparable with international standards. So this also applies to DBE learners. And
so just on that point, a child, and I was listening to Professor Mary Metcalfe earlier on saying that in terms of the standard and the equivalence of it, if a child from an IEB school sits down for a DBE exam, they should get the same marks,
yes,
right?
They're actually doing the same curriculum. The curriculum is the same, and the only difference is the methodology. That's why they say this side emphasizes on critical thinking. So it's the way of teaching and how they set their exams at the end of the day.
And this perception, right? I wonder what sort of real world direct consequence it has. Is it material, is it significant in terms of the perception that the DBE is of lower standard? We will discuss that with our guest as well. Let's just talk about the progress since 1994. And we mentioned in terms of how the DBE results have increased over the years. Talk to us about some of the standouts.
I mean, as we've seen, the class of 2023 has shown major improvement, and there were more bachelor qualifications that we saw. In the education, overall, early childhood development has gone up in terms of 5-year-olds are attending school more. It says in the latest stats, in fact, Stats SA released latest stats. Here it says 22 to 80%, but the latest stats by Stats SA revealed it was about 92% of 5-year-olds who are actually attending school now.
92%?
Yes, this is 9 out of 10 attending school. And we've seen an increase in grade 9 completion. Some get out of the system and go to TVET colleges. There's that option for grade 9s after grade 9. And we're seeing more black learners in former Model C schools and more access to higher education.
Right. Cynthia, I want to get some context in terms of our question of the day. We know that Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi has been talking about this issue of writing one exam, right? I want to get the viewers some context with regards to this. And this Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi, he's been reiterating his call for all matriculants in South Africa to be afforded an equal opportunity to write the same final examinations. This is what he had to say earlier this week. Take a look.
We've moved at the dawn of democracy from 53% to where we are now at 82%. And it's within that context that we strongly believe all our children should be treated equally and fairly and write one examination across the country to determine who's the best learner in our country. We can't have a situation when other children are perceived to be writing a poor quality exam and others are seen to be writing quality examination. All these children are South African children. All these children are going to the same university. All these children are taught by the same teachers that are taught at training at the same time. All these children deserve quality if there is quality somewhere.
Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi there. We're going to discuss that further with regards to what sort of difference will it make. Is it worth it changing the policy and going through that process in order for all children all grade 12s to write one exam? What sort of material effect would that have? But this is the other issue that we want to talk about. What about the schools that are not performing? What sort of challenges are they facing in terms of the underperforming schools?
Look, Blaine, I think there are many challenges that are affecting many schools, especially in the public sector. And as I've mentioned before, the issue of resources is a major thing for public school. You must understand that DBE caters for a variety of kids who come from different socio-economic backgrounds, from rural schools, township schools, and urban schools. And you find that the rural and township schools are often under-resourced in terms of resources. And that's why you'll see some of these challenges that are written up here. But another thing that was a major challenge for especially the class of 2023, the Matric class, was COVID-19 and its implication. And I know some people say it was a long time ago, it was just now. The class of 2023 lost a lot of time, which is like a foundation, grade 9 and grade 10. Grade 9, they lost about 60% of their learning. In grade 10, they were doing rotational learning, and examinations was not as common as they used to be. That was a loss of time in that. So that was a real challenge. And when I talk about even issues of resources, and if you look at IEB schools, for instance, they had resources like technology, which most of these rural schools and these township schools, they don't have access to those things.
So the socioeconomic variations could have a determining factor in terms of why we're seeing a difference in terms of IB and DBE. But we'll discuss that with our guests. Zinzi, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much for your time.
Zinzi is SABC News Specialist Researcher there. Lined up a number of guests as well as a digital audience with us here tonight to explore these issues. And something that I want to nail down is the factors that contribute to quality education. Mweli Matanzima is the DG for Basic Education. So thank you very much indeed for your time. And Nomusa Cembi is such as Media Officer in studio with us tonight. Thank you very much indeed. Our other guest is Professor Mary Metcalfe, Professor of Practice at UJ. Good to have you, Mary, on the program. I know you insist that we call you Mary. It's strange, but I will call you Mary. Thank you very much indeed, as well as a digital audience. Thank you so much. All right, Mweli, to you first. Look, as Zinzi was saying, the cohort 2023 faced numerous of challenges. It's one thing, and we tend to forget because we're at the tail end of the COVID-19, so some say. But they had to go through that. They had to change, they had to adapt. Still, pulling off A's, both IEB and DBE. What does that say about the education system?
Well, first is to really congratulate this class. And as the president said, it's a historic achievement, which is noteworthy. I think we really appreciate the feedback from the nation, the taxpayers, because we serve them. But more often than not, when we talk about a class, we say they are resilient, but for me, they are as resilient as the system that they've gone through. It's not the first class. It started with the class of 2020, 2021, and 2022. There was only a dip in 2020. From then, there's been an upward trajectory.
What is the difference? I was just reading Sunday Times reporting on a school in the Northwest for the deaf who in 2022 had a dismal 0% pass rate in terms of Matric. Now they're sitting at, I think it's 67% for 2023. And that was initiative from various role players, including parents, etc., etc. Why are we not seeing that across the board? Because it seemingly works, right? If you can get a school from 0 to 67, that initiative should be almost a blueprint for all schools. Is that being done?
Blaine, remember that in 2012, or probably a year earlier than that, the National Planning Commission released a diagnostic report. I'm happy Professor Mary Metcalfe is here as a national commissioner. They said 80% of our schools then were dysfunctional. You can't get 82% with schools that are still dysfunctional. So it means that the system has moved. We've produced a lot of instruments, such as Schools That Work, early by officials and experts, Martin Prue, Mrs. Palesa Kyobeka and others, put together, ideas to say to us, what are the basic things that schools must have in place? And then we came up with a document that says Schools That Work.
Right.
We also produce self-evaluation instrument, which covers 9 areas of evaluation. I think in some provinces they went up to 10. Schools are able to evaluate themselves against these instruments, and you go across the length and breadth of this country, and I can argue that there's virtually every area that I've been to, and schools are keeping to this self-evaluation and putting targets in place and working very hard to achieve those targets.
So one of the things that, if I remember correctly, in 2011 was the triple T, teachers, textbooks, time, basically meaning that teachers must be in class, on time, textbooks must be delivered, teachers must work at least, be teaching at least 7 hours a day. From what you've seen, and could this be the difference in terms of getting back to basics, right, and making schools work? Is that the difference in terms of the initiative of teachers taking a greater part in the education of our children?
Yes, as a union in education, we have done a lot to ensure that our members really, we've come up with campaigns to say they should be in class on time teaching. But as you mentioned, it's a triple three, the triple T. There's also textbooks and all that. We still are confronted with challenges of textbooks not being in time. Yes, there's a lot that is being done to ensure that things happen in time. We have textbooks, we have learning and teaching materials when schools open on the first day of school, but it's still not happening it's not 100%. But everything is being done to make sure that we reach that 100%, but we are still not there.
Right. Mary, I want to bring you in. Now that we're talking IEB around 98%, DBE 82.9%, is it time now to start shaking things up? Should we be all writing one exam in terms of grade 12? The suggestions from certain people. But before we get there, I just wanted to reiterate or something that I heard you say before with regards to the standard of IEB exam and the standard of DBE exam. Is it the same? Mary, if you can just unmute. There you go. Thank you.
The mechanism that we have in place to ensure that the standard of the examinations is the same is that we have a quality assurance body for all of the exams in the general and further education phase, and that is Umalusi. So what Umalusi does is it quality assures the exam questions, it quality assures the marking process, it quality assures the conditions under which the exams are written, and it quality assures the final marks. So I have great confidence in the professionalism and expertise within Umalusi. If a learner gets 90% or 68% in any of those exams, Umalusi will have done the work to make sure they are equivalent.
Right. So having said that, and if the standards are the same, is it necessary then for both or for all grade 12s to write one exam? Is it worth the process? I guess it has to go to policy changes, etc. It has to go to Parliament. Is that worth it? Is it necessary?
I don't think so, because the universities, the TVET colleges, further education, and internationally, people know that the standards are the same. So, for example, if I'm on a selection committee and a faculty, when I look at the IB, when I look at the NEC, we know that they're equivalent. I passionately believe that we need to address all of the problems that we can identify in basic education. I passionately believe that we need to address all of the components of quality. And I'm not persuaded that the work that would be required to dismantle the legislation and the institutions that have been set up, which will be several years away, right, is worth diverting our energy away from making sure that all government public schools are pro-poor in the way that we address issues of quality, just because the Constitution allows for an independent school sector and a public school sector. And that's taken forward in the legislation in terms of who offers examinations.
Right. Molatelo has his hands up. Let's hear from you, Molatelo.
Good evening. Happy New Year, Blaine. Nice to see you again. Blaine, I think I have a couple of things that I want to ask and also speak about. And I really like what Prof has just said, that we need to make sure that the education system is pro-poor. I think just saying that we need to write a standardized examination is sort of taking away the responsibility of people who actually need to do the work. You know, our education system needs an overhaul, a serious overhaul, and we can't just say that we need to we need to write one single examination. Who's going to regulate that examination? Yes, we speak about Umalusi and all of those, but who's going to regulate the examinations? And also, we need to understand the socio-economic challenges that we face on a daily basis as Black South Africans or South Africans in general. People who don't have textbook, who study under trees, who find themselves having to cross rivers to go and write an exam. You can't expect that person to go and write the same examination as someone who has an iPad that is preloaded with all the working material that they need in order to succeed. So just to say that we need to write a standardized examination, I think I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I do believe that there are avenues that we can explore to ensure that the education system or the education in general is being put on a level playing field. Because, and also, if you look at the pass rate, yes, there's 82.9% of our matriculants who passed, which is a great number. But how many of those people, or how many of the people who passed actually registered in grade 8? How many of them got to the finish line? You find that there's a glaring disparity as well in that regard as well. And also, when those kids go into varsity, they're the ones who struggle with the ones with the lower pass marks. They're the ones who struggle in universities. They're the ones who start first year but cannot complete their qualifications most of the time.
Let me put that to Mweli. I've got some figures in front of me here, which talks to your point. When the class of 2023 enrolled in grade 1 in 2012, there were 1.2 million, right? The department's database shows that just over 740,000 pupils progressed from grade 1 in 2012 to grade 12 in 2023. So where's the rest?
Well, I presented that in the technical report. Those figures come from us. No system would give you 100%. In fact, the comparison of IEB with 14,000 and over 800,000 candidates in DBE, it's a misnomer in terms of comparison. The former CEO of IEB said you can't compare the two. Umalusi, just a few weeks ago, said the basic education system, it's a vast system which cannot be compared to any in this country. Whilst we accept that there are some learners that do not go to grade 12 at the same time with all other learners. The throughput rate has improved. It has improved from 400,000 to now 700,000. It has improved tremendously. And we can do better. And the fact that those learners are not in grade 12, it doesn't mean that they got lost in the system. People forget that learners who are in TVET colleges are learners who completed grade 9 and went to apply and got admitted TVET colleges. Many South Africans think that learners who are in TVET colleges are learners who completed grade 12. That's not true. TVET colleges are not post-schooling institutions.
Right.
They take learners who finish grade 9 and they go to those colleges and they attend there. DHET said to us they are no longer even encouraging learners who finish grade 12 to go to TVET colleges because it's a waste of time. It's the same, duration in terms of qualification, 4-year qualification, NQF level 4. So when you go to a TVET, it's like repeating Matric.
I want to get your take with regards to one exam for all grade 12s. Is the department in favor of that?
Well, Professor Metcalfe has said a mouthful on this, and the colleague who spoke after Professor Metcalfe, a lot of it is political currency and expediency. As Prof. Metcalfe has indicated, there's only one quality assurance body in the country. Universities write different exams. What ensures that the standards are the same across the board, they also have a quality assurance body. TVET college is the same. Why are they not saying, there must only be one? So, all over the world, the issue of getting, exams being written under one assessment body does not necessarily say anything, for as long as the quality assurance is done by one body.
Important point. I'll go back to my digital audience shortly, but Nomusa, do you agree with what are teachers saying? Are they in that same train of thought with regards to that?
Yes, I would like to agree with what Professor Metcalfe and what Mr. Mweli have said, and one of our the audience says, because we have Umalusi who is there to do quality assurance, there can be as many exams as there can be, as long as there is that body that maintains that we have the same quality. So we are happy with the fact that with the situation as it is at the moment.
All right, let's go to our digital audience. Anele, let's talk to you. So if this is the case and there's consensus that the standard is the same, why don't then the question be, how can we improve the poorest of our schools, for instance?
Thank you to you, Blaine, and good evening to the DG and the fellow guests on the show. Good to see Professor Metcalfe. She used to be the DG when I was an MP, so I'm very happy to see her here today. We must indeed congratulate the class of 2023. The DG is correct. It is indeed a group of resilient students that has really come through for the country to demonstrate that when we have dedicated upcoming leaders, there's so much that we can achieve as a country. But that said, we must also speak on the reality that there is a multifaceted factors that we need to be cognizant of when we speak about the quality of education from a premise of a public system as versus the private system. We cannot start by wanting Blaine to change into wanting to have a country that writes one examination when the conditions in the schools have not yet been attended to. We are speaking about issue of access, which is a pivotal matter that we cannot overlook. And we must also deal with the fact that in some instances, we are not just talking about institutions in the form of public schools, where the issue is a challenge from the learners. It's an issue of access in as far as the provision of textbooks, basic textbooks to the schools to enable the student to fully apply themselves to ensure that they achieve. Those are serious conditions that we can't just think that they can easily be overlooked. I mean, as we speak right now, here in Gauteng, we've got a purported school that the department just went and put containers, and they said it's a school in Kempton Park. There are no ablution facilities. There's absolutely nothing. Can you imagine in a rural setup, what kind of schools are you dealing with? I think we must also recognize the reality that the socioeconomic varieties in our country, they are very much interlinked and intertwined with the extent to which our schools are able to perform qualitatively and also exceed in their performance. I think the most important thing that we must emphasize tonight is the one that says, we've got to ensure that there is an aggressive way with which we provide an enabling environment to ensure that public institutions become excellent institutions for our learners, and also we empower them to see education as a developmental tool that they can use to pursue their lives.
100% in terms, I agree with you, an aggressive approach and also a targeted approach, isn't it? We really need to start looking at what works and what works now and what is sustainable as well. The issue of schools and satellite schools, I'll put it to the DG as well. How sustainable is that going forward, given the pressure that certain areas are experiencing? Crystal, let's hear from you.
Good evening, colleagues, and good evening to those in studio. Crystal here from Youth Capital. I firstly, before I get into some meaty stuff, I want to take us back to basic maths, some stats, because nobody has spoken about this. We're speaking about percentages. In 2022, we had over 900,000 matric sit and write the matric exam. And this year we had just over 690,000. That's a massive difference. And so when we talk about an increase in pass rate, we must look at the denominator. To the DG's point that he made himself, to compare IEB, we have 50,000, your denominator is much smaller. Your chances of getting 40,000 of the 50,000 to get a really good mark is much easier than getting 800,000 of 1,000,000 to get a really good mark. And so we need to talk about the basic numbers, and I'm just not seeing people speak about that enough. So I just want to raise that really loudly from the rooftops. The number this year is much smaller, and that can explain the increased pass rate in and of itself. Then the second thing, I just really want to clarify something the DJ said, because we hear this all the time at Youth Capital from young people. Our post-schooling system is really confusing for people. And so a lot of young people do go to TVETs. They repeat NCV level 2, which is a matric. But I also want to caution that there are courses at TVET that go beyond matric. So young people need to think about it really carefully. Doesn't mean that a TVET is not for you if you have a matric, but make sure you're going to the correct NQF level. And we'll be resharing those pathways maps on all our social media for young people to follow. We've done the work at the DG Matric Trust already because it's very complicated and it's easy to get confused. And we don't want young people to waste time studying things that they've actually already got qualifications for. So I just really wanted to highlight those 2 points.
That's important. And, I guess this information is going to go a long way in order to help young people look for the avenues of opportunity that benefit them as well as their family. It's important. Kostas, let's hear it from you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Blaine. I wanted to ask the DG, when Zinzi had that slide there, she highlighted a number of issues with, call it the problem that we still have at schools. How is it possible that we still have got poor teaching quality, and also under-resourced school in 2023? Can the DG answer that? Simply because these are the things that makes the kids that will come from poorer households to be even more disadvantaged. So in a competitive South Africa.
Let's put it to the DG. Issues of resources and adequately capacitated teachers in order to get us to that proverbial better place. Why are we still having that issues in 2024?
Well, the minister spoke about pro-poor policies of government. All schools receive what is called national norms and standards funding. All public schools are receiving that, which was not the case before. I don't want to talk about the National School Nutrition Program, which is the biggest, second only to the HIV and AIDS prevention program in the country. Learner transport, just to mention those few. So the attempt by government is to try and level the play field. The colleague is right. We still have poor teachers in some schools. It used to be commonplace. That is not the case anymore. Otherwise, we would not even be talking about 82.9%. We have attracted many young people. Part of the problem was our teacher training teacher training education in the past. Yeah. Now that we have redirected that to universities, from a subject content point of view, that has improved a lot.
Right.
These bachelors and distinctions are also attributable to that. Over and above the hard work that the colleague talked about of teachers. In fact, in my view, teachers have gone far beyond just the call of duty. They work during weekends. They work during holidays. We find them when we monitor infrastructure projects, even working in the evenings. So the point that I'm making is that we still have instances where the context is uneven, but there are poor policies of government, and they are making a huge difference. Part of what the technical report reflected on is that quintile 1 to 3, in 2005, 40% the quintile 4 and 5 used to contribute 80% of bachelors. And quintile 1 to 3 contributed only 20%. In the class of 2023, the number has now increased to 65% of quintile 1 to 3. What does it say? It means that the pro-poor policies of government are indeed working. I do accept, we do monitor provision of LTSM. We monitor teacher quality. We do that regularly.
What is LTSM?
Sorry, learner and teacher support materials. I'm sorry. There's an avalanche of acronyms in basic education. And sometimes I make a mistake to assume that people understand.
It's important to break it down for the viewer as well, Nomusa. I mean, when you talk about the norms and standards funding, is that the reality on the ground? Is the pro-poor policies reflective on the ground?
Yes, the policies are there, but on the ground you find that sometimes things do not happen on time. On the issue of norms and standards, in KwaZulu-Natal, our members had to march towards the end of the year because the norms and standards schools had not received them. So the policies are there, but you find that in some provinces things won't happen on time.
Right. All right, you have to take a quick break. We've got so much more to discuss, so little time, but we'll get a digital audience take as well with regards to the various issues. What we're trying to boil it down to is what sort of measures contribute to quality education. You heard about the standard in terms of the IB and the DBE. So let's dig a little deeper. Might not get to everything, but it's a step in the direction of getting to that better place we always talk about. Quick break, more next. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. Our question of the week, and we're asking you, are you in favor of the notion of one exam for all grade 12s? Let us know at It's Topical SABC. We went out to the streets of Johannesburg, took to various streets, seeking diverse insights and perspectives. And this is what you had to say on this matter. Take a look.
Personally, I would support the view that is made by the Premier currently that at least as a country we need to choose one system that works for everyone. Yes, we do agree that actually, in fact, the systems are, there is one system, but it's only the standards that are different between NSC and then choose one that is going to work for the country.
The IBs are far superior. The pass rate, the minimum pass rate percentage is a lot higher. I mean, I'm just saying with the other guys, if I'm not mistaken, it's sitting at that your acceptable pass rate is 30%. I mean, you don't even have to open a book to get 30%, which in my opinion is ridiculous.
The fact that there's two main bodies, IB and the public education system, in everybody's perception, gives the idea that there's two educational systems. But the fact is, there's one curriculum that everybody gets examined on, but it's just the standards in the two different setups are different.
I would say that we shouldn't differentiate the bridges. Allow the bridge that is welded into the private schools to actually be implemented in township schools as well. Let it be one format, not to be differentiated because this is a private school and this is a township school. Let it be one education system, one platform, and everything should just be equal.
Because we can definitely notice that there's inequality and discretion between private education and government education. I'm hoping that government education continues to improve as we go, because I do feel like there should be some level of consistency between education.
All the schools should be at the same level. Why is it that we have different levels, but these kids are expected to enter a tertiary level? They sit at the same desk.
Right, we do appreciate your thoughts on this matter. I want to go straight to Mary. With regard, as you heard, there's still this confusion, or the perception is still strong out there that there's this vast difference between the standard of the IEB and the DBE and SC. So maybe explain to the viewers, why do we see IEB results higher than the DBE NSC results? Is it basically the socioeconomic variations? Is that at play here? Resources, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Chris Snell was the one who made the point, and also in the research that was presented to us by Cembi. The DBE system is absolutely huge. It's 700,000 to 800,000 learners across the length and breadth of the country. Every small village, every learner in the country has the right to be part of the public education system. And the scale of the DBE National Senior Certificate is just way huger, as the DG has pointed out. In fact, an interesting thing is that there's more private schools, independent schools, that write the DBE NSC than write the IEB NSC. So firstly, you're dealing different populations. So the population that writes the IEB is that small section of the population, about 18,000 learners, who go to schools which are immensely privileged on the whole. They are schools which learners attend them because their parents have got disposable income that they can invest. If we look, I was struck by this when you were talking about COVID, or when Zinzi was reminding us about COVID. During COVID, many children in private schools were able to carry on learning. They had access to Wi-Fi, they had access to bandwidth, etc. Not so in the public school system. So you can't compare the two. And the simplest way of saying it is the learners who write the IEB and get 80% or 60% would be likely to get that if there was no IEB and they were writing the DBE NSC. So it's really, for me, a non-issue. We've got bigger challenges to deal with, and that's what the guests on the panel are saying. Let's deal with the real issues that affect the poor.
Richard, let's hear from you, then we'll go to knowledge.
Thank you, Blaine, for the opportunity. I personally agree with what my colleagues have shared here. Prof. Mary is on point, DG is on point. And I think the departure point here should be really to try and simplify this conversation around one examination assessment system. Because it's got a historical background. From the 18th century up to 1953, when the Bantu Education Act was enacted, things changed. And one would understand that IEB comes at the back of the Joint Matriculation Board. And that history put into context now, it says this non-racial assessment system that was created by the JMB was to really mitigate the adversities of the Bantu Education Act. And having it stopped to exist in 1989 and we get the IEB, it is really precisely that we are not a classless society. We are a society of classes. We have a history that is of a separate development. And hence all the points that have been raised here by Mary Metcalfe and DG and my colleagues still remain prevalent in where our schools are in the public schooling system. And what do we really have to worry about? How big is IEB's examinations or independent schools or private schools?
Right.
Maybe they make 1%. Why should we really worry ourselves about 1%? They have a right. For me, let's deal with the bigger issues. The system is improving. The system is working. We are seeing improvements day by day. Let's deal with these issues of poor teaching in our schools. Let's deal with this issue of resources. And ideally, every country would need to have a one education system where the assessment system is one. And Mary Metcalfe has articulated it correctly. The two are almost just the same.
Right.
It's just that some people are preferring to remain in a private system, and some are preferring to remain in a public system. For me, the departure point is let's work and fix what is wrong in our schools.
Thank you very much indeed, Richard. And I think it was Mary that said that education tends to mirror inequalities in our society. So I guess the question is, how can we use education, if you flip it on its head, how can we use education in order to remove disparities within society? Knowledge?
Thank you very much, Blade, for having me. I would like to start by greeting the panel and also the viewers. But first and foremost, I would like to congratulate the matriculants, especially the poorest of the poor, who we have seen in the past, they have been crossing rivers, trying to get to school. So they really made it against all odds. So on that note, I would like to say I have no problem with one system being implemented. But my challenge in the meantime is that the system does not start with the exams. The system must start with the infrastructure so that when someone is studying in Kuro and writing a certain exam, they need to be using the similar infrastructure with someone who is in deep Eastern Cape, who is crossing these rivers. So the main focus must start on the infrastructure so that everyone is in the same level in terms of infrastructure. Then from there, we can start talking about having the same exam. Right. Then finally, I want to quote a certain Pan-Africanist who once said, when we are fighting for equality with whites, we are not fighting so that we can drag the whites from a better quality down to our low quality, but we are fighting so that we can move the majority from a low quality standard of living to a higher standard of living.
Right.
So if we are really interested in discussing those systems, let's start from the ground up and move everyone to a better quality. Thank you very much.
Knowledge, thank you very much indeed. Important input. As we wrap up, DG, I mean, infrastructure, no doubt important. Resources, no doubt important. The issue of moving from a certain standard of quality to a higher standard of quality. In the era of the fourth industrial revolution, in the era of AI, we need to be equipping these children in order to have that level playing field when they reach university. How best can we do that?
Well, I must also agree and apologize for having been rude and not greeted colleagues and the viewers. I just wanted to get straight to answering questions. Well, first, let's try and make a distinction. Pedagogically, quality is determined by four things: the curriculum, the teachers, the LTSM, and assessment. Infrastructure ICT and others are called enablers.
Right.
Even Professor Mary Metcalfe referred to them as enablers. I do agree with what colleagues are saying. There's infrastructure which is within the purview of basic education, which we are dealing with. I spend every week in these villages pushing contractors to move to deliver pit latrines so that our learners cease to demise in unsafe toilets. Tomorrow I'm going to the Eastern Cape. Every week I do that. And I've been doing that for the past 3 years. And it's for that reason that we have made the progress.
Right.
And of course, it's not attributable to me, but the team, provincial education departments have really moved. But there's infrastructure which is not within the purview of basic education. Bridges, we don't build bridges. It requires intergovernmental action. In other words, other government departments working with us to make sure that we build those bridges. I have seen schools, when it rains heavily, learners don't go to school. And it pains us because it's a drawback to the efforts that we are making. The issue of ICT, we've rolled out ICT. Many of these grade 12 learners who wrote their exams last year, if you go and find out from provinces, they were provided with devices. That's why some of them, learning doesn't end within the classroom. It continues. And our view is that in the long run, we would want all our learners to have these devices. And I fully agree with you and the observation made by the colleague that during COVID, learners who are from private schools continued with learning when the majority of the poor did not have access to these devices that are for them to continue to learn.
The deleterious effects of COVID is still with us, and it's always trying to be one step ahead of the game, I guess, so to speak. Thank you so much. We've run out of time. Digital audience, my guest tonight, appreciate your time. Value added, no doubt. The conversations will continue. But for now, we thank you very much indeed. All right, before we go, here's my take. Look, consequences are in part a function of speed of process, right? So efficiency becomes key. It helps us unlock quality education. And this specifically entails, according to UNESCO, issues such as provision of relevant school infrastructure, what we were talking about, equipment, appropriate skills, development, gender parity, the list goes on. So a wide range of issues needs to be considered. And no doubt progress has been made over the years. Let's build on that. Targeted intervention, support for both pupils and teachers. Questions. Are our children getting the best quality education we can give them? If not, what are the challenges? But most importantly, what are the solutions? It's answering these simple questions that gets us to the heart of the problem. We have to talk about it, right? We have to debate these issues. For at the end of that, the best idea emerges, and it gets our children to that better place. And that's my take. If you miss anything on the show, be sure to watch this episode of It's Topical on YouTube Sports Live. Up next with Zai Khan. If you're watching a repeat of this program, then as always, the news continues. Until next week, my brothers and sisters, take care. Bye-bye.